welcome back to Nightwind Archer. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you're enjoying the series, because I certainly am. If we look at our journal here, we can see that one of the next things that we need to do is we need to go to the gardener. We have this quest, Memory of a Blade. It should be here in chapter 2 as well. I managed to get some information from the wretched cheat. He won the sword from some gardener at St. Libiota's hospital. I have to talk to the gardener at St. Libiota, yes. So it turns out maybe the gardener would know where this silver sword came from that is currently equipped on my back. This silver sword right there. The gambler, this guy here, told us that he got it from the gardener. So let us go to the gardener and find out what he knows. One other thing I wanted to mention is if we look in my inventory here, if you look at this gold, my gold has increased to a little over 6,000. What I did is off camera, I did some gambling and I did some fights in the here in the inn. Mostly did gambling. Gambled with Taller because Taller seems to be the guy that offers the most gold. Yes, I did a few save scumming here and there, but I now have a good amount of gold, and one of the next things I want to do, as you know, as I've said many times before, I really want that piece of gear the smith is selling over at the Dwarven Smith. I want to get that piece of gear. But in addition to that, I also want to buy all those books that the antiquary, I think he's called, one of the people that sells books, he sells a bunch of books, and I want to buy all of them and read them all. So I got to have a lot of gold for that too. I don't think I have yet enough gold to buy both the gear, which was 5,000 orens, and also all the books as well. But we'll see. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go on my way to Taller's house, which if we look at our map here, or not the St. Libiota's hospital. This is where I need to go, but I really want to go to the this guy, the antiquarian. I'm going to take a pit stop at the antiquarian and read a bunch of books because I really want to read those books. And then after I read all of those books, we'll see where I'm at gold-wise, and then I'll stop at the hospital and see what's going on there. But let's go ahead and get those books because I have enough gold now to buy all those books and see how much I have left. Okay, here I am at the antiquary. If we look here...
What do you want?
What do you want? I would like to look at all these books. I want them all, as long as I haven't already read them. So you can see I've already read this one, I've already read that one, read that one, read that one, read that one, read that one. Wow. So let's take this one. Let's see, read. You've already read this. You've already read this. Let's take this one. Let's take this one. Already read it. Let's buy this. Haven't read this one yet, so let's take that one. Let's take this one. Already read it. Already read it. Already read it. Dragon's Dream. Let's go ahead and take that. I'm gonna just buy everything this guy has. Already read it. Literally everything that he can sell, I am going to buy. As long as I haven't already read it. Small Book of Minerals, let's take it. Ritual Plants, let's take it. Specters Raise the Damned. Ornithosaurs. Curses and the Cursed, and the Tome of Fear and Loathing Volume 2. Okay, so I think I've purchased every single book. All of the other ones I have already read. If I just quickly go through these, we can see that I have read all of these already, so I'm not going to buy them again, of course. And I have 2,380 gold. So buying these books took a lot of gold. So I'm gonna have to earn a lot more gold all over again to get 5,000 orens so that I can buy the chess piece. Okay, guys, well, I guess today's gonna be a lore episode because I'm about to read for the next 30 minutes or however long it takes to read all this stuff. So I'm gonna get somewhere cozy because I am going to do a bit of reading here. I don't want to be inside the inn because there's a bunch of screaming and yelling and stuff, so I guess what I'll do is I'll stand right here in front of the hospital. I need to talk to the gardener next, but right now we've got some lore to read. Definitely in the timestamps, I'm going to put which book in the timestamps, and you can just skip past it if you don't want to watch the reading part of the video, but let's get started. Okay, so the story of Lara Dorren and Cragen of Laud. So I'm going to have to read each thing kind of twice because there's the inscription here, but then there's also the journal entry. So the story of Lara Dorren and Cragen of Laud, as told by humans. The queen said, "Don't plead for mercy, but beg those whom you harmed with your sorcery. You had the courage to commit evil deeds. Be brave now, when justice is near. It is not in my power to pardon your sins." The witch sniggered like a cat in response. Her wicked eyes glimmered. "My doom is near," she shouted, "but yours is not far either, my queen. At the honor of your terrible death, you will remember Lara Dorren and her curse. And know that the curse will touch all your descendants over the next 10 generations." Yet, realizing that the queen was fearless at heart, the evil elven witch stopped swearing and threatening with curses and began whining like a bitch, begging for mercy and help. Oh boy, that's rough. If we look at her journal here, this is from the elves. I guess it would be here. I'll read this part and further down. The elves tell the story of Lara Dorren and Cragen of Laud, an elven sorceress and human wizard, the legendary lovers who formed the first union between the two races. I've read this before, this excerpt. Elves claim this relationship proved the peaceful coexistence between the races was possible, at least until humans treacherously killed the wizard and banished Lara. Thus, according to the elves, human hostility, possessiveness, and aggression were first demonstrated. These barbarian qualities make coexistence with humans impossible, and so the lovers' tragic end triggered a war that continues to this day. Humans have their own version of the legend of Lara Dorren and Cragen of Laud, which differs greatly from that of the elves. An elf and a human came together just after the conjunction of the spheres and the rise of the human race. The legendary lovers became a symbol of the peaceful coexistence of the two races, until some elves, jealous of Lara's attentions, treacherously killed the barbarian who had dared to get involved with their kinswoman. In the human version, Lara is portrayed as a witch. Cragen's death resulted in much treachery and scheming, and thus the hostility which exists today between the races is the elves' fault. Okay, yeah. Of course, you know, in legends and things, it's always going to be a difference between which history book you're reading from. The elves' history book or the human history book. That was that story. Again, more on the beginnings of the differences between elves and humans and non-humans. So that was that one. Let's read the next one, Transmutations and Metamorphoses. To follow the example of the sorcerer from the tower, we first need to classify substances, dividing them into superior and inferior varieties. Only the former can be described by the theory of interdependence presented here. Inferior substances do not produce a chain of quasi-life structures, for their nature is substandard in quality and they cannot exist independently. However, it has been proven that they are paradoxically essential for the chain to exist in spite of their inferiority. The hypothesis of interdependence assumes that the chain... What am I reading? The hypothesis of interdependence assumes that the chain of quasi-life must contain one substance of each superior element. Nonetheless, the chain's structure proposed by Rafford the White has too few places for them, namely only 5. If the chain were transposed and then transmuted, the problem would be easily solved. Alas, the first operation cannot be performed without damage to the chain's integrity. The only solution is to use a so-called reversed transmutation, which will eventually cause the chain to rotate. What the heck is going on? As a result of rotation, all 6 superior substances will constantly leave and join the chain without destroying it. From the holistic point of view, there will always be 6 superior substances occupying 5 places. The ingenuity of this solution lies in the chain having all the qualities of the three inferior substances. What? Thus, the paradox of interdependence, or as some say, coexistence, is no longer a problem. Unfortunately, since none of the modern works described how to perform reverse transmutation, the problem of animating the inanimate remains unresolved. What did I just read? Kalkstein? Okay, so Kalkstein is the author of many alchemical works, including a treatise analyzing attempts to animate inanimate matter, an activity known otherwise as constructing a golem. Apparently, the alchemist has been interested in this matter for years. Kalkstein's convoluted style makes his work difficult to read. Yeah, no shit. So basically, he's whatever it was that I just read, he basically wants to create a golem. That sounds like what Kalkstein wants to do, and this is the first entry of Kalkstein that I know of. Okay, so let's look at the next one here. That was that, so I've now read this one and this one. Let's go to the next. Cults and the Religions of the Nordlings. Now, from what I remember, Nordlings are basically all of the humans that are north of the Empire of Nilfgaard. Every human north of the Nilfgaardian Empire is a Nordling. They're still humans, they're just called Nordlings. I could be wrong, but that's my understanding so far. Okay, Cults and Religions of the Nordlings. Stefan Keller. Among the numerous faiths of the Nordlings, the most widespread is the cult of Militile, a goddess in three forms: young girl, mature, and old hag. Militile is a mother goddess caring for her children. Primarily women pray to her, though men in need might also utter supplications. The religion is a vestige of the old matriarchy and testifies to the weakness of the Nordlings. People who worship female deities are soft-hearted and incapable of preparing their sons for war. Okay, that's ridiculous. In recent years, the cult of Militile has found a rival in the cult of the Eternal Fire, which came out of Novigrad. Clerics of the Eternal Fire demonstrate fanaticism and almost complete devotion. The religion is hostile toward any form of otherness, including non-humans. The Order of the Flaming Rose is the cult's militant arm. The treatise also examines other faiths, including the cult of the Lionhead Spider. Okay, so there's the cult of Militile, and there's also the cult of the Eternal Fire. And then there's the Order of the Flaming Rose. So you've got the Eternal Fire and the Flaming Rose. The Flaming Rose is an order of a military order related to the cult of Eternal Fire. So then there's the cult of Militile, which is completely separate. So there's a few different things here. And that's another glossary entry, this time on the cult of Militile and elves and a few other things. So here with the cult of Militile, among the numerous faiths of the Nordlings, the most widespread is the cult of Militile, the goddess in three forms, young girl, yes. Militile is the mother goddess, extending her care over her children. Her following is not solely composed of women, men pray to her as well. Clerics of Militile preach love and peace, and they run many hospitals, shelters, and orphanages. Right? And then there's the cult of the Lionhead Spider. There was a little crypt that I found inside of the sewers where some Lionhead Spider cultists were. Coram Og Tur, called the Lionhead Spider, is a cruel deity who expects bloody sacrifices from his worshippers. The cult of the Lionhead Spider is banned, and there are but a few places in the world where its adherents can openly declare their faith. Okay, so that's good to know. The Lionhead Spider is really more of a dark cult, because it's the kind of cult that really I think is only spoken of in whispers, and people that are in the Lionhead Spider cult are really the worst kind of cultist because of the blood sacrifices and the fact that they're banned, and they're instead of them having a hospital or something to honor them, they instead cower in the sewers. Like that's some deep, dark stuff right there. Temeria strives to eradicate belief in the Lionhead Spider, and the cultists are tried as murderers. Yeah, okay, I understand that. And then we have elves again, but this time down here, Elves don't discuss their faith in the presence of humans because they think the barbarians would be unable to grasp its philosophical and mystical subtleties. Most humans, on the other hand, don't care about elven beliefs. It is a fact that some elves believe in Dana Midb, the mother goddess, who seems to be an embodiment of the goddess Militile. Okay, so the elves have their own goddess, a sort of parallel to Militile, and that would be Dana or Dana. I'm not sure if it's Dana or Dana, but Dana Mead. Okay, so that's that book down. So we've gotten through 3 books now, so hold on tight, guys. Zerrikanian insects and other vermin. Okay, so if I understand correctly, I thought Zerrikania was like a desert, but I could be wrong. But Zerrikanian insects and other vermin. Marco Knopf. Zerrikania, home of the venomous basilisk. That makes sense, because I would expect to find a basilisk in a desert environment, has given birth to other equally hideous creatures. Among them are spotted spiders, so huge that they trap elephants in their webs, and the no less terrifying tsetse flies. The flies are especially repulsive, laying their eggs in the human body, the resulting larva maturing within the host's head. The victim's brain serves as sustenance, and when the larvae turn into adult flies, they leave the body through the eye sockets. My God. Now void of the previously devoured eyes, these and other vermin are born in the far land of Zerrikania. Thank the gods that similar filth has not infested the northern kingdoms. Indeed. Let's learn more about Zerrikania. Oh, this might... you know what? I was right. I was right about this. Last episode, I put a map on screen and showed where I thought Zerrikania was, and I think I'm right based on this little excerpt right here. Zerrikania is a mysterious land located in the far south. Okay, I thought it was the far east. The northern kingdoms have very little to do with that realm. Not a lot is known about Zerrikania. Its climate is hot. Exotic animals roam the lands, and the inhabitants worship dragons. Furthermore, Zerrikania is famous for its alchemists who specialize in pyrotechnics, and for its tattooed warrior women who are skilled in the use of sabers. Yes, there were a few saber women that I read about in the Sword of Destiny. I've been reading that, and there were 2 Zerrikanian women that were helping out a dragon. You can read the story yourself. The first short story in the Sword of Destiny, one of the Witcher books. So let's exit out of that there. So we do know that it is indeed a desert environment. So we do have that. So next, it looks like we're reading Animating the Inanimate. Yes, this probably has more to do with what Kalkstein was talking about. This just updates the journal for Goblin's Obsidian Heart. Okay, so it allows us now to cultivate that from golems if I ever were to find one. And it adds golems here. Wow, I hope I can run into one of those. The golem is a creature made of stone or wood, brought to life by a mage and animated with the use of magic. Okay, so that's what Kalkstein seems to be interested in doing from what I've read. Its tough body is immune to sword blows and most effects. A golem can be stopped by its maker. Usually the giant is set in motion by a lightning bolt, so a major electric shock might incapacitate or even annihilate it. A golem uses its superhuman strength to knock down, stun, and crush opponents. The goblin's obsidian heart is used in alchemy. Once an absent-minded mage created a golem, animated by its casting Alzur's thunder, and ordered his new servant to fetch water, before burying himself in his scholarly books. The golem kept carrying water day and night without pause and ultimately flooded not only the mage's house, but the whole city. As you can see, my young students of the art, improper use of tools and a lack of elementary training may cause a tragedy. Annabelle Radfind lectures on security and hygiene in magic. That's interesting. So they will basically obediently do what you say. It's interesting because when I was reading The Sword of Destiny, in that same story that I was talking about, Yennefer referred to our boy here, Geralt, as an obedient golem that just does exactly what you say. So, you know, if you tell the golem to bring me water, it will continue bringing you water until you tell it to stop. I think that's a fascinating bit of extra lore there of how obedient golems are to their mages. And if we go to the next one, we have the Road of No Return. The book provides information on the magically created monster known as the Koshchi. So we have a Koshchi heart, the heart of the frightful Koshchi. That's interesting. And if we go to monsters, we now, oof, that thing looks gross and disgusting. I hope I don't run into one of those, but I probably will at some point. It's a mythical creature born of magic. Only a mighty mage who knows Alzur's work can summon a Koshchi. Okay, so it's a mythical creature born of magic. It's not a naturally occurring creature. Resistant to most effects and susceptible to silver, this relentless killing machine has no need for tactics. Okay. What, in your opinion, is the best way to describe a Koshchi? Death. I'd call it death. Yeah. It looks absolutely terrifying just from the picture alone. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right. Koshchi? That's what I think it is. So yeah, we can see his skull icon. So it's a boss monster. It's a real tough beast here. We keep reading along with our entries here. We now have a scroll for Dragon's Dream. A scroll contains the formula for a bomb. Upon detonation, the bomb releases a cloud of explosive gas. Interesting. So I can go here. The bomb releases a cloud of flammable gas, which causes a destructive explosion when ignited. And there are 5: 1 rebus, 1 measure of cuberth, 1 measure of vermilion, and 2 measures of hydrogenum. A Dragon's Dream bomb is made by mixing ingredients providing 1 measure each. Yes, indeed. Varies depending on opponent attributes, on how long it lasts. The Zerrikanians worship dragons, so it is no surprise this mixture, which releases a cloud of flammable gas, is named after the fearsome beasts. Whosoever detonates a Dragon's Dream is sure to conjure the spirit of the creature itself. Really? So basically what it seems like I could do is I can throw this bomb. The bomb will release a cloud of flammable gas. I can then use Igni to ignite that gas and create a massive explosion. That sounds really cool. And of course, that is something I would expect to come out of Zerrikania, as we just read how Zerrikanians are master alchemists in the, when it comes to like pyrotechnics. So let's continue on with our reading. And it looks like the rest of these things are mostly just beasts in glossary entries. They're not really lore. Well, they are lore related, but you know what I mean. The book provides information required to recognize Feainnewedd and obtain alchemical ingredients from it. So there we go. We have Feainnewedd here, a flower which grows only in places marked by elder blood. Huh. I wonder what elder blood is. Small book of minerals. The book describes basic mineral ingredients used in alchemy, including sulfur, Ganat's acid, winestone, nasen salts, calcium equine, and phosphorus. It also discusses the alchemical substances found in these materials. Okay, so we have sulfur in there, winestone, nasen salts, and phosphorus. So if we open up our journal, all of these things are now available to be gathered, obtained from carcasses of Alps and Bruxa. Sulfur is a yellow, and winestone, a substance made from wine by witchers. So there we go. This is really very helpful because by reading all these books, we are able to now collect these ingredients, because the way this game works is if you haven't read the alchemy of it, if you haven't read the lore, and the history and the knowledge, if you haven't gained the knowledge of the plant, then you won't even recognize it. You won't even be able to pluck it from wherever it is that it is. You won't be able to loot it. So here we are, a ritual of plants. Let's go ahead and read this. This book allows one to recognize allspice root, ergot seeds, wolfsbane, mandrake, hen, hops, and mistletoe. It also describes the methods for obtaining alchemical substances from them. So we got wolfsbane, the allspice, I think, ergot seeds, mandrake root, all this stuff, hop umbels, hen. I'm assuming all this stuff we won't even be able to, gather really until later acts. Hopefully I get to go out in the open again. I'm tired of being in the city, to be honest with you. And if we look here in our journal, allspice root, root of magical plant growth by druids. The seeds of a common weed would be ergot seeds. Hen, which is a poisonous field plant. Hop umbels is a plant used for brewing. And mandrake root, the root of poisonous plant with magical properties. And wolfsbane, a druid's herb. Okay, and we're getting close to the end here. We've got 4 more monsters to look at. So Specters, Wraiths, and the Damned. The book contains information of noon wraiths, night wraiths, specters, and the terrifying wild hunt. Okay, so there's noon wraith, shimmering dust, night wraith, and shadow dust ingredient, wraith monster, wild hunt monster. I definitely want to look at the wild hunt monster for sure. Here we go. So if we look here, we've got the wild hunt monster. The wild hunt appears in the sky as a harbinger of war and other misfortunes. Some believe it to be simply a magical phenomenon and not a horde of specters. Elven sources refer to it as the Red Raiders. There is no information about fighting the wild hunt. Wow. So there's no information. They must be really rare. There's no information about what they're susceptible to. There is some information about tactics, though. Warriors of the Wild Hunt do not have to fight. They inspire such terror that people cower after a mere glimpse. There are known instances of abductions by the Wild Hunt. Well, that's not really a tactic. I guess their tactic is just scaring you. But there is vapors of the Wild Hunt that can be collected. I'm sure that's a very valuable ingredient. I imagine that's really rare. The Wild Hunt is a horde of specters that roams the sky during storms and is an omen of disaster. The appearance of the Wild Hunt foreshadows war and woe, much as a comet does. The spectral Wild Hunt sometimes appears in nightmares of the cursed or those touched by destiny. So it's an omen. It's like an omen of war and woe. It's not something you want to see. It's interesting they said, much as a comet does. It foreshadows war and woe, much as a comet does. I guess in the Witcher universe, comets also foreshadow evil things. Oof, there's a noon wraith. Noon wraiths haunt cultivated fields and meadows. They always appear when the sun is high. They are specters, but at the same time, they maintain a strong connection to the natural world. They see the living, but cannot understand them, because the dead cannot hear the living. They are immune to blinding poison, pain, and bleeding attempts, and they are fearless. They are sensitive to silver and specter oil. They are able to grasp sun rays and blind their enemies with them. Wow, that's cool. They can grab onto sun rays and blind their enemies with them. Death dust, shimmering dust, and ectoplasm is things that can be collected from them. And noon wraiths are born at high noon out of heat, sadness, and the sweat of plowmen. In the hot air above the fields, they gather to dance madly, creating air vortices. But the specters dislike being watched. Those who peep are forced to dance with them. Noon wraiths stop their dance when the sun goes down, once the abducted mortal is long dead from fear and exhaustion. That's a really weird thing there. And then there's the night wraith, which is, I guess, the nighttime version. Night wraiths appear on fields and meadows. They can be found after dark when the moon is high. They are specters, but at the same time, they maintain a strong connection with the natural world, and they see the living but can understand them, yes, because the dead cannot hear the living. Immune to blinding, poison, pain, and bleeding attempts, they are fearless. Wow. They are susceptible to silver, though, and specter oil, and they are able to grasp the moonlight and blind their enemies with it. That's interesting. And you can collect the same ingredients. Night wraiths are born of moonlight, wind, and the earth cooling after the heat of the day. They rise above the ground and whirl in a mad dance, which should not be seen by any mortal. If caught peeping, the mortal is blinded by moonlight, then taken into the circle and forced to dance until he expires, at times becoming a night wraith himself. That's really weird. Forced to dance? And then there's the wraith. Now, I did experience one of these wraiths before. I was not able to loot anything from the wraiths, but now apparently I could, because now I have the wraith entry in my journal. Now, wraiths haunt the places where they died or were buried. They are specters which do not belong in this world. Sometimes they are summoned by magic, but more frequently, unfinished business makes them linger in our world. Immune to blinding and bleeding attempts, they are fearless and immune to poison, pain, and knockdown attempts. So this is interesting. They're more frequently found where there's unfinished business that makes them linger. They're sensitive to silver and specter oil. The suffering experienced by a wraith makes the wounds it inflicts more painful, and you can collect death dust and ectoplasm from them. If you want to get rid of a wraith, you must first find its body. Try searching an unhallowed ground, or in the corner of the cemetery where outlaws are buried. When you dig up the corpses, you will discover that it is not rotten and that there is blood on its lips. Pierce the corpse with an aspen stake, cut off the head and place it between the corpse's legs. To make certain that the wraith will never return, set the corpse on fire. One false step and will mean your demise. That's interesting. You've got to go through something of a ritual in order to permanently get rid of a wraith. Yeah, and this is all of the monsters, that a Witcher can be expected to have to take out as part of Witcher's work, and I think that's what makes the game and the whole Witcher universe so captivating, is because, there's just such magic in the world and interesting, creative things. So that was that one. Let's see. We've got a few more. We've got Ornithosaurs. The book contains information on female and male wyverns, as well as on the cockatrices and basilisks. So we've got wyverns, wing membrane ingredients, venom gland ingredients, royal wyverns, basilisks, and that's it. So if we look here, we have the basilisk. I have taken out a basilisk that was in the sewers. They often choose dark and damp places like caves and abandoned canal branches as their dwellings. And that totally makes sense because there was one in the sewer that I took out. They are immune to most poisons and resistant to stun attempts, and they are sensitive to silver and ornithosaur oil. I didn't even know that existed. Basilisk's most dangerous weapon is its venom, one of the strongest known toxins, and it has venom glands that can be taken for alchemy. Simple people call the basilisk the king of the Zerrikanian desert and often mistake it for a cockatrice. See, that's weird, because if a basilisk enjoys dark and damp places, then I would not expect them to find them in Zerrikania, which is supposed to be a very hot place, I would think, with little moisture. But anyway, they claim that the beast is filled with such hatred towards all living things that even its breath is venomous, and its glance turns the unwary to stone. In fairy tales, the only certain way to kill a basilisk is by holding a mirror in front of its eyes to divert its deadly gaze. Witchers reply that it is far better to smash the mirror on the creature's head. Yeah, of course, that's just myth and legend with turning to stone. Of course you don't turn to stone. We looked at the cockatrice, we didn't turn to stone. So there's a lot of myth and legend that comes along with these monsters that the local, populace will come up with. But of course, very little of it is actually manifests in reality. But there is some legitimate mystery to it, being that these beings are magical and ethereal. Some of them are. So it's understandable. There is definitely some mystery to these guys. Oof, and then there's a royal wyvern. Royal wyverns are large and more aggressive than their common cousins. They live in the wilderness, often in the mountains, as they like to build their nests on precipices. They attack any creature entering their territory. Resistant to stun attempts, immune to poison, and generally fearless. They're sensitive to silver and ornithosaur oil. They dive at their opponents, try to knock them down, and poison them with venom. They are more clever than uncommon wyverns and thus harder to defeat. Toxin and wing membrane, as long as venom glands can be extracted for alchemy. The female royal wyvern is small, but more cunning and venomous than her male counterpart. She can be aggressive towards both males and other females. She is a perfect example of how gender relations among humans have their source in the animal world. This is altogether not surprising. Master Dorgare, against the institution of marriage. Against the institution of marriage. And then we have the regular wyvern. Wyverns live in the wilderness or near human settlements. They are a natural element of the ecosystem. They are prized by druids who tame them. That's insane. Resistant to stun and poison attempts, sensitive to silver and ornithosaur oil. They dive at their opponents, try to knock them down. Yes. Wyverns are unlucky to be frequently mistaken for dragons. Seeing a reptile approaching a flock of sheep, peasants panic. They expect it to breathe fire, massacre everyone, and abduct the local virgins. While it is true that wyverns hunt sheep, they neither breathe fire nor lay waste to whole villages. And they are completely indifferent to virgins. Of course they are. So that's interesting. And then in our ingredients, we probably have some updates. Yes, the shadow dust and the shimmering dust from the wraiths, and the wing membrane from the wyverns. All right. And are we getting close here? There's two more. We have two more to read. So we've got Curses and the Cursed. The treatise deals with Echinopsae, and Archispores. It also discusses cases of lycanthropy and striga spells. Interesting. So we've got the werewolf and the striga heart from the ingredients collected, and the Echinops monster, as well as the spores and the Echinops rootstock, and the Archispore and the Archispore juice ingredient. Okay, so more monsters here. Let's start with the monsters first. There's the Archispore juice. So yeah, these things are just awful. They're similar to Echinops, I assume. Archispores grow in places where particularly cruel crimes have been committed, or on the tombs of the victims of such crimes. They are immune to all mind effects, like fear, stun, and axii, and they feel no pain and cannot be poisoned, blind, knocked down, or bled to death. Archispores are sensitive to silver and very susceptible to incineration attempts. Okay, that's good to know. So these plants can burn very easily. They shoot poison thorns. Some crimes are so terrible that they fill people with terror and offend the gods. The criminal's ill will and the cruelty of his deeds conceive a curse that brings the Archispore to life. The beast attacks innocent creatures hatefully, trying to take vengeance until justice is done. I wonder what the difference between Archispore and Echinops are, because they seem very similar. Echinopsae grow in places where crimes have been committed and on the graves of the victims of such crimes. Similar to the same thing as the Archispore. Echinopsae are monstrous plants which grow in places where terrible crimes have been committed. The beasts try to take their vengeance on criminals, but they do not spare the lives of the innocents who haplessly enter their territory. So what it sounds like to me is Echinops are plants that grow from the victims of crimes, where Archispores grow on the people that committed the crime. So the Archispore is the crime committer, and the Echinops is the victim of such crime. Each monster grows depending on whether it was the victim or the perpetrator. So that's a really interesting distinction. And then, of course, the famous Striga. I think it's one of the most famous things on the Monster universe, or the Witcher universe. It was in the opening cinematic of this game. A Striga is a woman transformed into a monster by a curse. She is filled with hatred towards all living beings, devouring them gladly. A Striga may tolerate necrophages. She needs a hideout during the day, often choosing a sarcophagus in a forgotten branch of crypt. And they're resistant to steel. Sensitive to silver, a Striga may be freed from her curse by those who survive a night near her sarcophagus. A Striga is a very strong and agile creature, but not as resilient as she might seem. She attacks by surprise and tries to tear opponents to pieces without giving them a chance to fight back. Near her sarcophagus, a Striga is always stronger. Alright, you can get a Striga heart from that. And where does it come from? Spells? Magic? I have no idea, sire. The sages research these phenomena. For us Witchers, it is enough to know that strong will may create them. We also like to know how to fight them. And kill them? Most frequently, yes. That is what we are usually paid for. Few want the spell lifted. People usually just want to be protected. If the monster has killed people, revenge may be another motive. Interesting. And then the werewolf. We have not met a werewolf yet. Werewolves are lycanthropes, which mean that they are shape changers. Humans transform into werewolves as a result of curses. Creatures lurk near human settlements. They are resistant to steel and most effects. Sensitive to silver, they attack with fury and like to be on the offensive, confident of their resistance to conventional weapons. Baron Wolfstein buried his face in his hands. His heart was throbbing. Suddenly the scent of his wife's blood and the blood of his children intensified. The Baron's body swelled as his muscles grew. His noble attire fell in tatters on the marble floor. My beloved you are so hairy. You are a werewolf. Bianca went pale. What about our love? In reply, she heard a terrifying roar. Danelle Stone, the curse of Baron Wolfstein and other love stories. My goodness. And then in the ingredients, we do have the Echinops rootstock, of course, and the spores from the Archospore carcass and Echinops, and the Striga heart. All right, are we almost done? Last one, guys, the very last one, the Tome of Fear and Loathing 2. It provides information on Alguls, Scimitars, and Devourers. It discusses methods of fighting the monsters and alchemical ingredients that can be obtained from them. So we get the Algul marrow ingredient, Scimitar monster, the Scimitar jaw, the Devourer, the Devourer's teeth, and that'll be it. So if we look here, we have the Devourer teeth, but let's look at the monsters first. Oh, that is a creepy. Man, that is creepy. That's the most creepy thing I think I've seen so far. Devourers are scavengers which live near human settlements, usually in caves and ruins. They are immune to conventional poison and resistant to knockdown attempts. They're sensitive to silver and necrophage oil. They try to knock down their victims and eat them alive. Oof. You can get Shadow Dust, Cadaverine, Albar's crystals, and Devourer's teeth. Devourers are often called night witches because they resemble old, ugly women and are famous for their witch-like viciousness. These creatures gorge themselves on human flesh, although they willingly eat carcasses. Above all, they crave flesh that is fresh and warm. Devourers hunt after dark in groups that peasants refer to as Sabbaths. They like to deceive their victims and torture them, but there is no truth to the tales, their midnight flights on broomsticks and their gingerbread houses. Yes, of course. Very, very creepy. Then we have the Scimitar. I haven't met one of these. I have met an Algul, but we'll get to that. Scimitars are rare, and they are found on battlefields and cemeteries just like other necrophages. They try to knock down their victims and eat them alive. Much has been written about ghouls and graviers, since they are encountered by common people in times of war and in cemeteries. Scimitars are rare, but when they appear in a necropolis, they take it over. All ghouls respect them and must bow to them. So I guess this is the ultimate ghoul. The ultimate ghoul is a scimitar, like the biggest boss monster of ghouls. This owl ghoul, I've met these before, for sure. They appear in old necropolises and crypts. Sensitive to silver, the strong style is most efficient against owl ghouls. Experienced witchers use the group style while fighting multiple. Owl ghouls are ghouls which have been devouring corpses for so many years that human flesh becomes irresistible and they begin to prey on the living. They are seen in crypts and on battlefields, frequently surrounded by ghouls. Simple folk do not notice the differences between these two types of scavengers, unlike witchers who know that the owl ghoul is more aggressive and challenging opponent. So there's the owl ghoul and the ghoul. Slightly different, and they are hard to determine the difference between them. They do look very different, but the owl ghoul is slightly stronger than the regular ghoul. So let's go ahead and in that... Wait, did I get everything? Let me make sure. Did I get all of them? Yes, that is all of them. And then ingredients. Of course, we have the owl ghoul marrow, the scimitar jaw, and that's it. So I have finally finished all of the reading from all of those books, and it was a really good thing that I did, because now after doing all of that reading, I have I have all of these ingredients and things that I can use for my future adventures. Well, that was a really long, that was a full episode of reading. That whole thing was a full episode of reading. So I guess that'll do it for this episode, guys. This was a lore episode. The entire episode, I was just reading books and reading about lore and reading about monsters. And so yeah, I guess we'll end it there. And next episode, I'll actually be adventuring. Continuing my adventure in The Witcher. So I hope you enjoy these kinds of episodes where I'm just reading about lore. They won't happen too often because, well, once you're done reading it, you've read it. So thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this lore episode, and I'll see you next time.